Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. My name is Mo, and today I'm thrilled to welcome to the show Matt Sandoval, CEO of Free Arts for Abused Children of Arizona, also known as Free Arts AZ. Matt brings 20 years plus of human services and nonprofit leadership experience to his role, combining his background as a licensed master social worker with a passion for trauma-informed care, creative mentoring, and community transformation. Since taking the helm in November 2023, he's led Free Arts AZ through a period of growth, championing art-based mentorship and mental health advocacy for youth affected by abuse, and homelessness, foster care transitions. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mo. Exciting to be here.
Why don't you start by telling my audience a little bit about who Matt Sandoval is, your background, what led you into human services, how you eventually became the CEO of Free Arts AZ.
Yeah, I can go on about this for a while, but I'll try to keep it short and snappy. But I've been involved in working in programs that support and help children, youth, and families pretty much going on 20 years. And at my age, I just keep going plus and plus years. But that has been the feature of my work. And it comes from early experiences I had, particularly watching my dad make adjustments in his career and put him in spaces where he was basically doing mentoring type services for very vulnerable teenagers. And so as a 10 and 12-year-old, I was very influenced by the fact that adults as a career spend time helping people. And so rather than it being something I was told to do or felt was pressured, it became kind of a way of seeing opportunity to help others, but also provide some meaning and structure to your own life. And I think that's fair for most people to realize about why they get involved in the helping professions. So I've done that in a variety of contexts. I've been a teacher. I have worked in nonprofits. I've been a program director, executive director, and then not to use all the titles, but all the VP and CEO language along the way. I've achieved a master in education and educational leadership, and also a master in social work, because a little bit later in life, I realized what I want to do next, I want to have as a base of knowledge, a way to work and speak around therapeutic and clinical spaces. So that means I also, in a very small part of my life, still do clinical therapy as an associate therapist licensed in the state of Arizona, although that's not my primary work within Free Arts. So to introduce Free Arts, I've been here going on 3 years plus 2 years as the CEO. What we do is pair trained adult mentors to work with young people who are in foster care or in some form of kinship care. So a vulnerable population that is involved with child welfare, or young people who are living in shelters because they're experiencing homelessness, or their families had a recent experience with domestic violence, and also young people living in treatment centers. So we do art-based, trauma-informed art activities for this vulnerable group of people, and we train ordinary group mentors, adults. So they aren't clinicians. This isn't art therapy by the book, but it is therapeutic. It is promotional of growth. It is supportive of where they are. And it's done by trained, rank and file, regular people, which we believe is an additional strength because, we are wired to connect as people, and we celebrate that here at Free Arts and provide art as a medium to do an important thing, which is help people find a sense of well-being. And so when we say things that we believe that art heals, which is one of our tags, Art Heals AZ, you'll see it on a lot of our stuff. That's what we're saying, is that art and the relationship you have with a mentor in a group setting is something that supports our well-being, and that itself is a healing journey.
Why don't you tell me a little bit more about that? How does Arts AZ use art, like drawing, painting, creative expression, as a tool for healing and transformation for those youth who have experienced trauma?
Yeah, depending on the program, we have different opportunities where someone might take part in an art activity just for that one day. But our higher impact programs take place weekly over a series of time, either by mentors that may not be professional artists. And then there are certain programs that we offer where a professional artist, somebody known in their field, painting, sculpture, movement, dance, music, I'm giving you all kinds of labels here, would lead a session 4 to 6 weeks in length that supports young people. That second element with a professional artist often has an exhibition, a culmination that might be in the group home. It might be something on a stage in Phoenix. It just depends. And we also do camps. But in terms of the types of art, if there's an artist and a group that wants to do it, it'll be part of our universe. So a lot of our work is visual. It's the easiest to understand. We do a lot of visual arts, a lot of collage, a lot of building, making, drawing, painting. Lately, there's been a lot of quilting. We had a new staff member join who's very passionate about quilting. We did a community quilt with the adults on an important AZ Gives Day last April, and it hangs now in our gallery. So building and quilting, sewing. And it's really interesting because a lot of young people don't know, like, oh, I don't know if I care about quilting. And then we give them a chance to be part of it. And suddenly they're over here like picking the perfect needle and the perfect thread. And these are people who didn't know coming into the session that they were going to suddenly care about quilting the way they do. And that's what's interesting about the arts, is that the mode is beautiful and the medium is powerful, but often it's the ability to experience what it's like to take to work. There's a certain amount of mindfulness that takes place in the art experience, where in order to do art, you have to be here. You have to kind of focus on what's in front of you, whatever if it's a literal canvas or a figurative canvas, that takes us right back to this moment. And we have a very powerful mantra among our art community here, which is that there are no mistakes in art. And that's important because we have professional artists. We have people who are very talented on staff who have had art training. Then there's people like me who appreciate the art, but I'm never going to have a gallery. You're not going to come and see my painting. But that doesn't mean I don't get to participate or that I don't take the same value out of that creative experience. And so we find that the creative element, being able to do simple art either through a building block of several sessions or a one day, one session only, gives people a sense to be grounded in their feelings, their state, gives them a sense to express what's important. Art does a powerful thing because it also lets people express ideas or even just contemplate what's happening in their life in a way that doesn't really require direct language, because some of the most important things about our life are not things that are easily described. And so when people say, hey, this thing is like this song, or it's like this painting, or it's this mood I get from this movie, that's art. That's the experience of art, showing us complexity, showing us journey, showing us transformation. And we do that every day with a very vulnerable group of teenagers, children, and families.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for doing this work. Leading a nonprofit focused on trauma, foster care, and abuse, it has to come with a very heavy emotional weight. So how do you as a leader and your staff care for your own mental health and avoid burnout?
Yeah, I think an important part for us has been, we're at 33 years. I've been involved in the last 3, which means I inherited a lot of our cultural aspects. So it's really up to my role and other leaders to kind of maintain them, but also bring in new ones. And so I think there's some healthy things about an organization like this, which is having important mantras like there are no mistakes in art, realizing that when it's done well, a well-facilitated expressive arts activity is an opportunity for self-compassion, because most of the other things we do in life do not lend itself to you being kinder to yourself. If anything, most of our interactions are about comparison or quick judgment. This is how our brain works, right? Learning to appreciate the machinery of our thinking and of our mind, and to not either feel completely attached to that and believe every story our mind tells us, and also to feel like I'm the only one that thinks and feels this way. It's part of the human experience. So normalizing that, supporting one another around mantras like no mistakes in art is important. We have a collective set of shared agreements that promote really healthy things about celebrating humanity, the dignity of all people. We also are very mindful of finding the right opportunity to share and be vulnerable. And vulnerability is a tricky word, right? It became very buzzworthy in a good way, I believe. Brene Brown really centered that. And I think it helps people understand that in order for me to really connect to others, I have to be ready to take a interpersonal risk. But face it, in our culture, saying the word vulnerability often triggers a lot of feelings for weakness. And so we want to work with that rather than just think that somebody can really set that kind of defensive posture aside. We easily can't. We've been kind of prompted by a lot of our life experiences or messages we get in culture, particularly in different ways for different genders. So men have a certain experience around whether it's good or bad to be viewed as vulnerable because they assume it leads automatically to weakness. And so we modify those things. We talk about it as being real, being authentic, understanding what's needed in the moment, what's authentic and true to me. These are also parts of being vulnerable. So I think that's another component. And I think the third thing here to kind of tie some of the essential parts that we do as a community around being trauma responsive for each other is something we've learned, which is to promote for people to go as far as they need to, that we can share lessons of life, perhaps leave the story behind. And that means we don't necessarily give a full diary of all of the very terrible things that may have happened to us, but we might summarize them to say, I've been through difficulties. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I have learned. Because what can be very challenging in a space like this with well-meaning people, and every month we train about 20-ish new mentors in the Phoenix, Tucson area. We're pretty much growing through central Arizona and the southern part. Northern Arizona, we're coming to you at some point. But these are people that may have never been in a space that knows how to create some healthy boundaries about sharing traumas and adversities. Because sometimes even sharing our story, it can impact somebody who's not quite ready to process things. They've come for a different reason, and now they're getting this very reactive experience they weren't quite ready for. And being trauma responsive is knowing that something that I might have grown through might be something someone's currently operating at or maybe even stuck at, and to just respect that we're all in our own process. So we talk about there's no mistakes in art. We talk about our shared agreements around mutual care. That doesn't mean we're always perfect. It means often we have to go back and repair things. But then finally, I think it's also about knowing what trauma responsive, trauma informed as a community means, which is we do what we can to minimize exposure to more adversity. We don't want to re-traumatize people. That can often be what happens, especially when we force people to tell their story. We tell them it's important. We demand them. This could come from a parent, it could come from an older adult. It can come from a society an assignment, a simple one in a college class that asks you to reflect on something challenging. And we don't prepare people to know that, maybe that's a little too deep for the audience. We don't know what that audience will do with that information that might not feel that safe. But we create that safety for our environment because we want people to be able to take their own appropriate risks. So we don't want to build safety hoping that the world will never cause us a challenge or that we won't ever feel bad. That's not realistic. We create safety so people can learn how to take the risks they want to take, like doing an interview on a podcast, like going for a job interview, talking to the person that they have a crush on. I mean, all the more serious and the more silly, all the things that kind of get us worked up. Those are the things that we want to take a risk at, because when we take the risks toward things that are important to us, our sense of well-being, our self-efficacy, which is fancy for I can do hard things, that boosts our mood, right? So often when we are feeling down and in a negative spiral pattern, we're no longer doing and stretching into areas that are important to us. And often when we're in too many settings, when we're stretching and doing hard stuff that's not important to us, that's when we're going to start struggling. I mean, that makes a lot of sense when people are like, man, I'm bored, or I really hate this school program I'm in, or I don't like my friend group anymore, or whatever it might be. It's not feeling like it's that stretch toward values that are important to them.
Matt, what's your vision for growth or expansion for Free Arts AZ in the next 3 to 5 years? Are there new programs, partnerships, initiatives that are especially exciting to you?
Yeah, internally for us, and I'll just say right up front, we consider Arizona to be where we operate. So if you're outside of Arizona and you're inspired and want to learn more about how to do something like what we're doing in your neighborhood, contact us. We don't see that as competition at all. And in fact, every August, and this year, August 13th, we do a symposium. Come on in to Scottsdale for a one-day training event about trauma-informed art activities to impact these audiences. But in Arizona, what we're progressively doing is growing into other parts of the state. So we've been focusing a lot on the Tucson area. For those who are not familiar with Arizona, that's about 90 minutes as a drive, 2 hours-ish south of Phoenix. And the area is growing so rapidly that it's almost feeling connected, that you really aren't missing too much. We're closing in on that desert and they're becoming kind of one thing. But that's been our focus for the last year and a half, to be able to build partnerships. And by partners, we're looking for agencies that work in foster care, shelter environments, or treatment centers. And we are also looking for ways to find new artists and to recruit new adult mentors in those spaces to work in their neighborhood. When it works best, we offer the program where children live. right in the group home, right in the shelter. We don't require people to come to our building. And even though we have a nice one in uptown, downtown Phoenix, 5% of our program happens here. Honestly, most of it is way out in different contexts on purpose, because that's a familiar space to our audience. And the logistics are slightly easier, which means we need artists and partners all over the Valley. Phoenix is a huge metro center. The county, Maricopa County that it's in, is one of the largest in the country. And so that's our vision there, is to spread what we do. And so in terms of programming, we're concentrating more on serving in repeated programming, a little less on one day only. So that means our weekly mentor, as the name tells you, this is 8 to 12 weeks of sustained weekly mentor-led trauma-informed activities. We do these where people can enter and exit as they come into the shelter. So it's perfect for that environment. We're not going to say, oh, you got here on the wrong date to start free arts. No, you're ready to jump into Weekly Mentor. A professional art series, as the name tells you, is led by professional artists. It's a little shorter, more focused on an actual skill development process and often an exhibition. And that one does have a start and a stop, but it's shorter. So we feel like people can tie into that. And then I think one of the more powerful things our data tells us, we do some very rigorous evaluations around our service, is that camp. And anyone who's been to summer camp, either a day camp or a resident camp, often has nostalgic recall of how powerful it was. We do day camps, we do several, and those are things that we can do for a few days in a row, where there really is no match for how much you're around people. You're around people all day, rotating through different projects, different opportunities, and also riding the wave of, yay, this is scary, but I want to try it. Wednesday, oh, do I have to go? Thursday, okay, I'm here and I'm doing this showcase on Friday, but now I'm really nervous. So they take the whole journey over the several days of fear to excitement to a little bit of angst in the middle to accomplishing a showcase at the end. And that's the power of what we do, is realizing that our moods and our challenges change around us, and we can adopt the posture to do what's best for ourselves and the environment at any time. And so that natural progression through the many days of camp is all part of the experience. So that's the programmatic piece. That's the statewide piece. What we're getting into, which is actually prompting why we're doing an interview, is we believe we have a story to tell, that our data is rigorous enough to say this matters to a field in child welfare. These children that are in foster care, that are under the care of the state because of experiences of adversity and trauma, they are hard to track. They move a lot. They move between providers. And so the data as a collective research field is really narrow about what supports their overall well-being. And unfortunately, parts of their outcomes as they grow into young adults and adults are very serious and sometimes can be quite negative in terms of how often they experience homelessness, difficulty with full employment. This is all the hallmarks of their negative experiences as children through no fault of their own. So this is not a message about blame. This is a message to the community that we need multiple ways to support this group that has been through very difficult things. So all that to say, this interview and our symposium and our growing speaking and training platform is thought leadership. And so as you are listening to us, hey, come tell us about what works to be trauma responsive, trauma informed. Tell us how to add art into our vulnerable populations. We believe that free arts is a powerful voice to help others replicate the parts of what free arts does to your audience, to your environment.
Matt, in a world with limited resources and overwhelming need, how do you stay hopeful? What keeps you going when you see pain, trauma, systematic brokenness?
Yeah, I think what's been helpful for me throughout my career, I've been in and around the helping professions, and some of them have had art pieces where that has been the furthest from me. And unfortunately, based on a little bit on my upbringing and some attitudes that were in kind of the religious communities that I was part of, art wasn't really like a value. It wasn't being creative, wasn't really something that we made time for. So it always felt a little foreign to me. And then you embed yourself by taking a role like this, and there's creativity literally everywhere. I'm going to reach behind me here. I'm like, just on a random Friday night, let's just collage with other volunteers and just spend time with our mentors. This happened about a month ago. And we just had a free session with one of our artists talking about collage, and we set it all up and people came in as an open house. And what really happened was most of the adults who came to visit all mentors. It was literally open. So you could come before the first Friday, which is an art event downtown in Phoenix, come hang out. And most people hung out the whole time because it was fun to sit around, make your art, talk to others, meet new people. The shifts were natural. So where I'm going with this is to say that the opportunity to create, the opportunity to make things is a very telling process, I think, for what helps people through adversity or trauma, which was we can't change what has occurred to us. That's the very nature of this experience, is that it's unfair and unplanned for. And it can be sudden and it can be tragic, or for some, it's been pervasive. And they get to a point when they're older and they realize, wow, what I experienced in my home was not normal. And now I know that. And so what do we want to do with this pain? And art is a powerful way to realize that I can learn to sit with, I can have another adult. This often takes place therapeutically or in a group. Sit with me, understand, provide empathy while I reattach to safer places to be. And what do I do with that? I can take that experience of noticing my pain, sitting with it, and I can decide what's true for me. I can develop values. I can develop insight. I can take those and in a kind of almost mystical way, allow art to be a canvas where I explore what I want for my life, what I want to be a set of ultimate lessons about what it means to connect, to be loved, to belong to a community, and express that in stages. So there's no sense that any collage or any piece is the final product. It's where I am today, telling the story that I have, and that connects to a community. So when people come together and do this art side by side, in a way, we're all respecting that everyone's on that journey. And so back to your central question is, how do we maintain that hope? Is that we can take that heartbreak, those heartbreaking situations, and through art, we can transform it into some new set of meaning and understanding. And that gives us the ability to live a life where heartbreak doesn't get the last word. It is part of the story, and it's often a grief work to understand that that story may never leave my memory, but I can have a bigger, fuller frame of my life where that's only part and it's not the main story. It's not the headline. And art helps people. It promotes that journey. It records that journey. And it is something that belongs to us. And when we're ready to share it, it's something that can be shared with others. And man, I tell you, when people reach deep and use art to describe what doesn't have words, people really respond. People really respond.
Yeah, how do you define resilience, both for young people healing from trauma and for the leaders who are walking with them?
Yeah, we talk about resilience work all the time. I mean, our magic formula is art plus mentors equals resilience. And so the very simple definition coming back for free arts is that resilience is being able to bounce back. And that has an opportunity to feel like it's a performance. We can obviously fake certain things. Certainly in a work and professional context, that's true, right? What does it mean to be professional in a lot of ways? You fake a kindness because that's appropriate to the setting. But when we're talking about interpersonal resilience, we're talking about a phenomena of realizing what's true for me, what values, what's important, and can I gather my energy in a way where the ups and downs of my life, the ups and downs of my memories do not limit my activities toward what's important to me. So connecting, teaching, training, building a business empire, it's all across the board. And there's no judgments about what that might mean. But resilience is understanding what that is for you and then building the internal structures that support that, our ability to bounce back, our ability to be any of the cultural metaphors we have. Because of my age and a little bit of my own sports upbringing, I love a good metaphor involving boxers and Rocky. And even when I'm having a hard workout, I'll put on the old like Rocky 3, Rocky 4 training montages because there's something distinct about that underdog who believes in himself, but knows really at the end of the day, I have a small group of people, but I really have me and I've got to get up early and I've got to do the training. And the training is its own journey. Now, the good news on that whole metaphor is that it works out for them. But for most people, the journey, the training is the journey. It is its own value. Believing in yourself, showing up for you. Those are all resilience pieces. So I shared mine, but find yours. Find your cultural milestone that says, yeah, I feel like that person. And again, that's another way of letting art tell your story, because it's someone else's art to write that story and make those movies. And people forget, like the very first Rocky won Best Picture. Like, this is fine art, but maybe by the fifth one, we're not so tracking toward the awards anymore, but that's life, right? And then we come back with new brands, and Creed, at least the first couple of them, I enjoyed a lot because it tells that story of that fight that many of us believe we're alone in, which is, do I belong? Do I matter? And we learn over time that we don't have to have that be a journey that we take on our.
Well, I'll have to say that I do have that same training montage on my training playlist. So I think you and I are probably about the same age, because that fires me up. I love that message. Matt, what's the message that you want to give to young people watching today on YouTube or listening somewhere, especially those who have felt broken or unseen or stuck?
Yeah. One, I'd say broken's how we feel. It's not who we are. Right. And often it could feel so bad, we think that's always going to be the story. And I could tell you, as somebody who's lost more hair than I'd like to admit to, right, the video will not lie to you. Used to have a full head of it. So I've got a few years behind me. And one of the operating metaphors I have is, I think, people have asked me, boil down in a sentence what you think therapy is all about. Oh, okay. We try that. But it comes down to something like this, that at any point in our life, whether we're 12, we're 19, we're 29, 49, go on, we can look back and see an earlier version of us that exists, that has its own strengths and its own hurts. And then later on, there's another one. And these might have had real milestones. So in your mind, as you're hearing this, you might be thinking, when I was 12, this happened. When I was 17, this happened. When I was 29, this happened. Okay, notice that. And notice who you are now, because in a very mystical way, we are able to sit with those versions of us as now, we hope, more skilled, more patient, more tolerant, more kind. And we learn to support the earlier versions of us, right? So for my clinicians listening, this sounds like IFS parts work. Sure. Those of you who are more into the TikToks of the therapeutic world, inner child work. But in reality, see where you've had obstacles and you were there for you. And then now, as a maturing person, and you don't have to be my age to have this happen. You can be 25 and look back at the 9 and 12 and 16-year-old and comfort the versions of you that you needed at that moment, right? So what is most displacing in those traumatic adversities is that we feel like we're alone. And by the details of some of them, we are alone. So we acknowledge that. But in this moment, in the recall of my memory, I am here for me now. I bring new insight, new resources, new comfort, new relationships, new supports. And so I think that's the interpersonal vision that I would share, is that you could be there for you. It does take work. It does take a little bit of training in the Rocky-esque sort of way. And art can be a guide to that, because it helps us record what that journey is like.
Matt, how can people learn more about getting involved with Free Arts AZ? Where can they connect with you? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, they can find out more about our organization at freeartsaz.org. So that tells the story. If you're local and want to get involved, you can do it that way. If you want to stay up to date on our training opportunities, come to our symposium or reach out to one of us. You could also do it through that site. I could be found on LinkedIn, Matt Sandoval. You'll see a Art Heals photo, so you'll know it's me. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way to get a message to me. If you're interested about our work in particular, we do have our own podcast called Canvas of the Heart, all available in the typical places where you get podcasts. It is video formatted too, so you can find it on YouTube. But those are the ways to reach out to me about Free Arts work. And then in terms of leadership development and also supports to people who are working in and around the helping professions, which is its own unique adversities and traumas, I'm also a resource for something like that. It's a little beyond the operations of Free Arts, but you can reach out to me for that as well.
Well, thanks so much, Matt, for sitting down and giving my listeners a little bit about what you do today. I really appreciate it. Listeners, if this conversation resonated, make sure you reach out to Matt, and always like, subscribe, share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it maybe. And don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter. It comes to you every month, and it's absolutely free. Matt, hope to have you on again. Until next time, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Love to do it anytime.
Yes, sir.